Guys, welcome back to another episode of the Construction Business Blueprint YouTube channel. The channel where if you're a trade and construction business owner, you can come and hear our best work that we do with our private mentees to get more time, more profit and more control in your business. So we've got one question today and it's a major one. Does it run without you? And it's a perfect time of the year to be having this conversation. A time where people are going on holidays, you're going on holidays, trying to get some time off, trying to take a step back from the business, but does it or does it allow you to? And we're not just going to talk about that today. For some people, that's a really obvious question. What if I stepped away for a few weeks, what would happen? Usually that's the dumbest question. It is obvious. Nothing would happen. It would all fall apart. So we're not just going to talk at you today. And as usual, we're going to get you to leave with something here to make a fix in the business and implement straight away so that you can actually start to take a step back and actually enjoy those holidays and look forward to them rather than dread them. So we're going to talk about the 2-week test. All right, and again, it's always a cliche question you see online of like, if you stepped away from your business for 2 weeks, what would happen? For most people watching this, that question is glaringly obvious, okay? But for some of you, you do get some time off, but you may not be present. You're still got anxiety about the phone ringing. You're checking emails. You're maybe dialing in the morning for a few hours, again in the afternoon, again in the evening. So I'm talking about not the fake version of switching off. I'm talking about the real version. How many of you watching this with a trade and construction business can actually go away on holiday with family or take time out, sit by the pool without checking your phone, without your beer going warm, without the kids screaming, "Daddy, come on, jump into the pool," or "Mummy," or whatever it may be? How many of you can actually do that? So we're going to talk about like who in the team right now. Maybe there is no team, and again we'll talk about that. But who knows where the project is, who knows what needs ordered, who knows what needs to be done, who knows what needs to be checked in on, which client needs to be contacted. If we aren't in a position to be able to delegate those things or organize those things in such a way that it can be taken over come Monday morning without your input. And again, guys, we can put this same scenario into if something happened to you, if you break a leg in the morning, if you get sick, God forbid something happens, how much is the business dependent on you? We're not just talking about holidays, but it's just coincidental that's the time of year that we are, so it's worth noting. And the truth is that construction businesses don't usually fall apart instantly, okay? It's usually not in a big dramatic way. Just like every problem that happens in business, it's usually quieter than that. It's usually slower, like a decision gets delayed, a client doesn't get an update, an invoice doesn't get sent out, a variation or an extra bit of work gets missed. It's usually these small things that happen when you're not fully involved all the time that gets missed, that maybe comes up in 30 days, 60 days down the line, and that's when it starts to have the impact. And then you're scrambling trying to figure out what happened and when. So what happens 9 times out of 10, you come back from your holiday, you come back from your break, you come back from being off, wherever it is you do, and it's a mess. Not necessarily a disaster. Things may have ticked on. Jimmy and Johnny on site may have managed to get the kitchen across the line or the bathroom done or thereabouts, but maybe the client's a bit pissed off because they didn't know. Maybe there hasn't been a single penny invoiced out of the business in the last few weeks, or if it was, you were on holiday, frantically doing it, trying to do it while the wife doesn't see you doing it. So you name it, look, it can happen. We can go through every eventuality and every scenario here, but the point is you come back to the disaster, and then you tell yourself that same thing. See, look, I can't leave them. I can't do it. It's not possible. It's just this game. It's just these people. Well, I'm here to tell you that it's not. And the reason why it didn't is that the team didn't fail. Okay, and again, I don't want it to sound cliche, but it's a fact. It's not usually the team that's the issue. It's not usually the client that's the issue. It's the structure. It's how the business is set up. The business needs you because that's exactly how it has been set up, and it's been built to depend on you, and it's never been done any other way. And again, nobody's saying that we've done this intentionally. Okay, so nobody sets out to build something that absolutely relies on them at every point in time, but it happens by default because that's how we started. So say you started off just you and your van going out on your own, or maybe an apprentice. Then you brought in more guys, but the leadership never changed. Your how you done things never changed. It's just always been that way, but you've maybe grew bigger, grew larger, and that dependency always remained. So at the start, you are the business. You're doing everything because you're the only one in it, and maybe that's still the case. But again, if that is the case, we're going to talk about ways you can get out of that. If that has evolved since then we're going to talk about how we can actually do that right now before we have, or while we have team. Everything relies on you. Every price goes through you. Every invoice that gets sent out needs your approval, or only you know what needs invoiced. The client only has your contact details, doesn't know about anybody else in the team, etc., etc. You haven't actually given any responsibility to anybody else and told them, okay, while I'm away, here are the decisions that you're allowed to make. Here's what you need to ring me about in an emergency. That's never kind of been mapped out. You've just kind of done as much as you could before you went away. You've said to the guys, look guys, I'm away for a week or 2 weeks here. Look, this is what needs to be done as in the job. And then you've left and you've just hoped for the best. And maybe you've checked in the odd day. Maybe you haven't because you felt I don't need to or I shouldn't have to. But again, the reality is that's kind of how it's set up. So it's inevitable. You're going to get the calls. You're going to get anxiety. Like you're going to leave the phone in the room at all best intentions and then go back at lunchtime. You have to go to the room to pick something and go and check your phone frantically because you're panicking. And look, the reason how I know and I'm laughing is because I've been there, I've done it, and I've experienced it. So what happens if you're one of those guys that the business has grown, okay, and you have more guys working for you, there is team, so the business is scaled, but without actually putting things in place, what have you actually scaled? Unfortunately, you've just scaled dependency. So you've just grew something bigger that needs more of your dependency, more of your time, more of your management, more of your leadership, all of those things. You haven't actually scaled anything in the business. So what kind of happens is you fall into this inevitable sequence of you've got bigger turnover, bigger team, bigger risk, and smaller freedom. So you're kind of earning more on paper. You've got more guys going, but you're just carrying more. You're just carrying more responsibility, carrying more in your head, and that's when you kind of have to say to yourself, shit, this business isn't the same anymore. So neither can I be, and neither can the systems, the processes, and everything it's built on. So essentially, you become the ceiling. This business can only grow to what you can personally carry. The whole thing bounces on you, okay? And that's not something to be proud of. That's a weakness. That's not a strength. Like, this business really needs me and, it's strong because I'm always there. That's actually quite fragile. That's a fragile model. If you're tired or something's wrong and you're suffering in some way, shape, or form, so does the business. And again, this is not some sort of criticism, okay? You've got this far building it from nothing. There's been no manual. Nobody's showing you the way. You've only maybe got your uncle, your brother, your cousin, your granda, whoever to give advice by, and they didn't crack this either. So it's certainly not a criticism, but we just need to identify it and at least be aware that it doesn't have to be that way. Okay, there is another option. So the biggest kickback that I would probably get is that, we don't have the time to sit down and map all that out, okay? But while that may be a real life or feel like a real scenario for most people, time usually isn't the problem. Most people hear it and think, I need more time, better diary, I'll get up earlier, I'll work later, answer faster. While time matters, okay, and we've done trainings in here, I've obviously with my own clients, but even here on other YouTube episodes, we've done the daily diary, we've talked about the white space, we've talked about Friday reset. So even taking all those things into account, if you had those things, usually what happens is if I gave you another 10 hours in your week, you would usually fill that time with more decisions, more clients, more work. You just fill it with what you already have. You wouldn't necessarily do anything differently when you have more time. So that's what we're going to identify here. This is deeper. This is identity, okay? And a lot of you still identify as the operator. And in this channel, you've heard me talk about the founder versus the operator. The founder is the guy getting stuck into the day-to-day, doing the work, the stuff that needs to be done. And the founder is obviously then the guy who does the work on the business, the quiet work that nobody's asking for, nobody's patting you on the back. So we're gonna, you're still identifying as the operator, the one who does everything, who knows best, who jumps in, saves the day, the one who says, it's just quicker if I do it myself, and this business needs me and no one else can do it like me. That's the operator. And that's the identity that most of us are holding on to in this industry. And sometimes, like I always mention, it is quicker in the short term, but long term it's a trap because quicker today usually means weaker tomorrow. Every time you step in and take things back, you're training the business to need you. Every time you step in and micromanage, you're telling the team that you'll solve it, and they'll step back and say, well, there's no point in me coming in and taking over making decisions, because he's just going to come in, undermine it, take over everything, so I don't really need to think about it. I'll just come in, do what I need to do to the bare minimum and leave again. So you're kind of training the staff to do that thing. You also, that works the same with clients. So you're also training clients that you're the only one that they can speak to, you're the only one that can make a decision. And maybe, and you might be listening to this and thinking, but that is the case. And again, that all comes down to because how it's being led and managed so far. You've never actually mapped out to anybody what delegation or handing responsibility over looks like, because giving an instruction is not the same as handing over and delegating. Telling somebody what to do today lasts for a few hours. Handing over ownership to something is completely different, and that's how things don't come back to you. But we're going to talk about that on a later episode we've got coming up here. So we talked about the founder versus operator and owner versus operator, okay? So there's two different questions. An operator asks, how do I get this done? And an owner or a founder asks, how do I get this done without everything coming through me? So how do I do this that it's not it doesn't involve me in every single aspect. So again, the goal has to move from you being the most organized or being the best decision maker to building something that moves without you being in the middle of every single decision. And that starts with detaching. Okay, and bear with me here, this is going to be maybe a bit difficult to comprehend, but before you actually build something or before you put something new in place, if you try to build systems, if you try to put process in place, but you're still attached to the idea or the fact that you're needed at every single decision, only you can do those things, then you'll sabotage them. You know, whatever you believe to be true is true. So if you think that it can't be done, you don't believe it'll work, you don't think your team are good enough, then you're right. But if you think, you know what, I need to do things differently, my team could step up, this is possible and it has to happen, and then it will. So you could put the best system or plan in place in the world, but until you detach from being that person who's needed to make that happen and say, you know what, this can happen without me, these guys are capable of doing this, if I just explain it right, map it out and whatever else. So you need to detach from having that sort of identity as being the hero, as being the one that fixes it all, as being the one that is only good enough to actually carry out the task or the job. Until you detach, none of the systems, processes, plans that we ever talk about in here or anybody else will ever give you will actually work. So what will happen is, and I see it all the time, you'll create a system. I could give somebody the best plan in the world, but if they leave, you know, if they sit with me and go, yep, 100% Mark, yeah, great, that's perfect, I'm going to do that straight away. And then they walk out the door and they crumple in the ball, throw it in the bin and walk out of there, it's never going to happen. And even if every will in the world, they keep it, they laminate it, they hang it up on their wall, they read it every day. But if they don't believe that any of their team are actually capable of it, if they're going, this is mental, I'm doing this, but there's no way this is going to work, well then it won't. That's just a fact, because you haven't detached from it, you don't believe in it enough, you're not prepared to actually do it. So deep down, subconsciously, whatever you want to call it, whatever your belief is, it won't happen because you're waiting for something to go wrong. And if you're waiting for something to go wrong, then it absolutely will. So let's talk about how we can actually do this. Let's talk about how we can actually identify what you need to detach from, what you need to let go of, what needs to, work without you being there. Because again, there's no point in going out of here and listening to this and trying to fix everything at once. Like we always talk about it on this channel, we always try and focus on one thing, we accomplish that thing, we implement that thing before moving on to the next. So we're going to look at the things that go on in your business. We're going to put it through a bit of an audit. And for my clients, we've done this a few weeks ago. We have a whole worksheet, which again, if you comment below workbook, we were happy to send it over to you. Or DM me the word workbook and I'll happy to take you through the whole process that my clients went through. So first we're gonna score. We're gonna score you on what you do. So go through your business area by area. We're gonna look at money, we're gonna look at team, clients, operations, decisions, quality, finance, you name it. For each one of them, we're gonna score it. And again, this is easier when you have the sheet in front of you, so if you want it, reach out. So for each one, does it stop without me? So if I'm not there, does it happen? Or does it run whether I'm there or not? So score the reality, not the intention, not what you want it to be. Not what would happen on a good week with the right people and the right mood and the right team around you. Right now, with what you currently have at your disposal, in each of those areas, money, team, clients, operations, decision, quality. Maybe you score it from 1 to 5. 1 being doesn't happen at all without my input. 5, yes, it happens. We're going to score each of those areas. And again, like we always say here, be brutal, be honest, because only you're looking at this, only you're seeing this. So let's talk about the reality. Nobody's going to see this. Then we're going to find what breaks first. Okay, so if you walked away tomorrow, it wouldn't all break at once. One thing goes first, and here's the catch. The first thing is usually the thing that you're proudest of being good at. Okay, most proud of being good at. So if you're good at pricing, every price goes through you. If you're good with clients, every client only communicates with you. They only ring you. If a question needs answered, they only call you and your phone never stops. Your strength becomes the bottleneck, and everything's not an answer. There's always a first domino, so you have to find it. So when you score those areas from 1 to 5, you may have a lot of 1s, you may have some 2s and 3s. What's the first one that even jumps out at you and you think to yourself, absolutely not, no way, and I can't ever see how that would ever happen? That's the one to focus on here. That's the one that, if it scares you the most, or what breaks first. You could always look at it another way, but I want you to pick one thing. You either pick the hardest one, the most difficult one, or the lowest scored, or if you want, and you're maybe only starting off in this kind of thing, pick the easiest one. It could be client communication. It could be setting the rest of the lads up on site. You could give that to another guy. A team huddle on a Monday morning doesn't need to be done by you. It could be done by the senior guy on site. You fill him in on the Friday. He goes to the site on Monday morning, fills the rest of the guys in, feeds back into you. And now you don't need to be on site every single morning and tell the guys what to do. So pick one of those areas, okay? That's what you're going to focus on. So we're going to pick one thing and we're going to be very, very specific. One thing, one dependency to start moving off you, one dependency that you're going to detach from and say, I'm no longer going to own this anymore. And we're going to make it specific. Don't just make it generalized, like sort the team, get better systems, delegate more, do less. That's not specific. That means nothing come Monday morning at 8 a.m. You're telling the guys, so I need you to sort the team. And he's going, right, sort the team in what way? What does that look like? You need to literally map this out. So what that would actually look like on paper on this exercise would be get the site lead to send the client update every Friday and keep me copied in. That's an instruction, that's a delegation, that's a handover. For the first 4 weeks he needs to keep me copied in. After that, and I've seen he can do it well, and I can coach him on how to do it and what to say and what not to say, have an eye on the replies and sort of teach him on it, then that's a delegation. So getting somebody to now take over client updates. And what I mean by that again, remember we talked about detaching. It doesn't mean, say it goes by email or it goes by WhatsApp and you're in a group chat and you've got Johnny to send the customer a client update and the customer responds. You don't then jump in and reply. Maybe if Johnny hasn't replied within 24 hours, you give Johnny a nudge, or if Johnny doesn't know what to say, you coach Johnny on what to say. Same as if Johnny's asked for an update or asked for something from the client and the clients came back and rang you. You say, what's happening? Okay, well, so you want, Johnny sent you a message? Well, probably best if you go through Johnny. Johnny has complete control of the job. He knows exactly what he needs to do. Because again, if you don't, then again, that's you stepping in, you're taking over, you're undermining, and the very thing that you have asked somebody to take responsibility for, you've automatically taken it back. And that goes the same for anything. Any sort of management you have in place, finance you have in place, whatever. That's what we mean about detaching. We can coach the person, but never step in and take over. So we're going to bring it all home here. Today wasn't about building a system, and that was intentional. So first, like I say, we need to actually detach from the responsibility. We have to believe that it happens. Detach from being the only one who knows. We have to get comfortable with that. That's what we mean by detach here. You have to get comfortable with not being the hero anymore, being the fixer, the one who knows everything, the one who has everything in here. Because the very thing that you say you don't want, you keep bouncing in and jumping onto again. From detaching from the idea that everything depends on you and giving you proof or trying to find proof that you're right isn't the approach. Because dependency actually costs you. It costs you time, headspace, growth. Again, we're talking about family time, holidays here. It'll cost you all that. And it costs the business value, because the business that needs you every single day isn't much of an asset. It's a job, maybe a good one. And again, I hate this whole scenario, the cliche statement of you haven't built a business, you've built a job, but it's a fact. That's a fact. A business that needs you and that you're the most valuable asset and you take you out of the picture, it all falls apart, isn't really much of a business or much of an asset. If you were hoping to maybe build this up one day and sell it on or give it to somebody else or do whatever, pass it on to kids, and you're not involved anymore, it doesn't work, then it's not really much of an asset at all. I haven't really got much of a business yet. But you have to ask yourself this question: am I actually willing to let it? Am I actually willing to let this business run without me, operate without me? And I don't mean, when I say delegate or operate without you, I don't mean give somebody an instruction and turn your back on it and never look at it again. That's what people think walk away means, or work without you means. It means without you needing to be in every single facet, every single piece, and that's the only thing that keeps the wheels moving. We're talking about being there, keeping an oversight on things, making sure things are happening, but not necessarily being the one to do it. That's what we mean by detach or delegating. So a lot of business owners say they want the business to run without them, but what they really want is freedom without letting go. So in other words, you want your cake and eat it too. But that doesn't really exist. You don't kind of get both. At some point, you need to choose, do I want to be needed or do I want to build something that actually works? So like I said, this video wasn't about building systems. It wasn't about implementing anything straight away. It was just about detaching. It was about recognizing things. It was about scoring the business on what needs you most and starting to work on one thing. In the next episode, we're going to start talking about how we can actually delegate things and start moving things off your plate. So if you haven't already and you don't want to miss it, you want to keep up with the series, be sure to subscribe. We are dropping episodes like this every single week. The exact same lessons that we put our clients through every single week that have massive wins from this, and again, we share time and time again. So if you want to keep up, if you want to get some of our best work, be sure to like, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.